Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvina Vadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we be nurtured together. May we be nourished together. May we strive together. May our learning shine. May we not quarrel. Peace. We got until here. But let's just do a little quick revision to snap back into the previous session to catch up. So we stopped at, this is what we just sang. Weapons cannot kill it. Fire can't burn it. This is the self. Water can't wet it, and the wind is unable to dry it. It is changeless and all-pervading. So this is verse 23 and 24. And just to give you an idea, if you keep your eye on that, I'm going to read you the definition from Chinmayananda's chapter 2. So here's what Chinmaya says. This is his translation. Weapons cleave it not, fire burns it not, water moistens it not, wind dries it not. Okay? And actually I'm going to also read the verse 24. The self cannot be cut, nor burnt, nor moistened, nor dried. It is eternal, all-pervading, stable, immovable, and ancient. Now, just to give you an idea how different versions of the Gita have a subtle change, just so you know that we're actually covering, we're not missing one Gita out, because I understand there's many versions of the Gitas on the market. This is from Srimad Bhagavad Gita from Swami Dayananda. He was a disciple of Chinmayananda, and he has his own Gurukulam in Rishikesh called Ashra Vidya, and I go there every year myself. I also go there this year for my own Vedanta training. Okay, so we read what the meaning 23 and 24 is from the Chinmayana. This is what Dayananda says. Weapons do not slay this self, nor does fire burn it. Water does not wet or drown, nor does wind dry it. Now, that one. This self cannot be slain, burnt, drowned, or dried. It is changeless, all-pervading, stable, immovable, and eternal. And here, we have weapons cannot kill it, fire can't burn it, water can't wet it, and the wind is unable to dry it. It is changeless and all-pervading. So, we can see how we bring three different versions. We got two Gitas, and then we have the summary. So, what we're doing is we're doing a summary of these Gitas. Because when I say it is changeless and all-pervading, that just pretty much sums up the entire verse. And then also we explain to you what that actually means. Okay, so we also covered the topic of reincarnation. Now, this was actually missed a little bit. It wasn't addressed. And this comes from verse 22. And if you remember, we read this before. We said, just as a person throws away old clothes and puts on new ones, the self dwelling within the body discards old bodies and enters new ones. So that's actually a statement of reincarnation in the chapter 2, verses 22. Now, let's actually explain about this reincarnation, just to give us an idea of what does this actually mean to say reincarnation. Now, I'm going to give you two views. There is a traditional view of incarnation, and there is a Vedantic view of reincarnation. So let's talk about the both, and then we'll bring them together. The first view, traditional, so when I say traditional, it means just generally when you think about how the spiritual world thinks about reincarnation. What they're saying is, because we have our past conditions, Past conditions mean what we have done in the past. And that causes us to apply or perform a certain action. So, for example, if I have a tendency to be polite to people, despite them being rude to me, then no matter who in the future is rude to me, I'm going to simply continue that condition. I'm going to be polite to them also. Similarly, on the other side, if I have always been, I haven't been listening and I've been sort of ignoring people when they're talking to me, then even in the future, when someone comes up to me, then I'm going to repeat the same tendency. So now, that means that my tendency, my vasana, therefore, is causing me to act in the present based on how I have performed in the past. So the past, hence, is your karma, which is prarabdha. Remember, prarabdha is destiny. And destiny is always affecting my present. And because it's always affecting my present, what happens is I then create another tendency to act how I have acted in the past. So, what does this mean now in terms of reincarnation? So that means because I'm constantly being, quote, a victim to the past, that means to my karma, that means that I'm always entangled in the action performed in the present. So, for example, let's say I'm rude because I've done that before, and then I'm rude to another person, and then as soon as I put out an action, that becomes karma. So we just want to clear this up. If an action stays in the mind, that is not producing karma. That means you can imagine all the bad things about someone or all the good things about it. It's not going to produce anything. That's just going to stay in the mind. Now, you could say it is going to affect the state of mind and it will potentially affect the thought. But until the action, until the thought is put out into the world, only then does it produce karma. Meaning, does it then produce, and then is the field required to then to that return that back to me. It's very basic. What you put out is what you give back. Right? It's just a common law of the universe. In other words, what you give is what you receive. So that means next time somebody is rude to me or somebody does something because of what I've done to someone else, then I'm just going to get entangled in that situation. Now, just imagine thousands of these entanglements throughout the course of our lives. That's going to keep us very busy, just playing out our karma and our vasanas, our tendencies. Because our tendencies produce karma, karma refuels the tendency, and then every time the tendency is performed, it reproduces another karma, producing another action to perform like I've done in the past, and then therefore every single present moment I end up doing the same thing over and over again, producing more karma, and then the field is obligated to return that back to me, and then I have to deal with that situation, and that is called worldly entanglements, samsara. Okay, so now, how does this relate to reincarnation? Because I have so many vasanas, likes and dislikes, it becomes impossible to self-inquire, to discriminate between Atman and Anatman, that is the self and not self. It's just common sense. If one is entangled in worldly actions, in worldly situations, it's not possible to coherently and consistently produce a sense of discrimination between self and not self, me and not me. You understand? Okay, so that means the summary is, as long as the vasanas remain, it's going to cause the jiva to be entangled in the world, and that's going to keep the jiva away from pursuing self-knowledge. Okay, so that's the traditional view of reincarnation. And then what happens is, when a person dies, we're still talking about traditional, because their subtle body goes back into the causal body. Now, this is very simple. There's nothing mystical about what I'm saying. When the subtle body goes back into your causal body, the simple way to explain this is when you go to deep sleep, what happens to your life? It disappears. In other words, your life goes right back into where? It goes somewhere. In other words, the subtle, your mind, your intellect, your personality goes somewhere. Where is that? In the causal body. And then what happens when we wake up? The world comes back. Our personality comes back and we continue right where we left off. That's how cool Ishvara is. And Ishvara keeps track of this for 7 billion bodies every single day. You don't ever wake up with somebody else's karma, do you? You don't ever wake up like, I'm Bob. Hi guys, I'm Bob. You always wake up with the same person, right? So you can see how vast and beautiful Ishvara actually is to able to keep track and give you exactly where you picked off from the day before. All right. So now, because these vasanas, we're still on traditional reincarnation, because these vasanas are unexhausted, they're still present, then upon death, the birth is going to be one which produces a body in the right situation to exhaust those remaining vasanas which weren't exhausted in the previous life. You understand? So that means if, for example, I was extremely impatient in the last life, then the new life, and I die like that, I die impatient, I haven't resolved my impatience, then the new life is going to be one where I'm born maybe in parents who are extremely good at patience. So they're going to teach me patience. Or maybe I'm going to be born, the body's going to be born in a family that is just getting me to wait for everything. Wait for my ice cream, wait for my toys, wait for my computer games, wait for everything. So I'm going to learn patience. Okay. So now we have solved traditional reincarnation. Now let's move on to Vedantic view of reincarnation. Now, before I go into the Vedantic view of reincarnation, let's ask, how does the first view of reincarnation actually have any benefit? It doesn't. You know why? Because the person that you are now, called eternal Jiva, okay? The person that you are now, your personality, called eternal, your non-eternal Jiva, the Jiva, non-eternal Jiva, is not going to be there in the next life. So what's the point of worrying about being reincarnated, right? Because you are right now, that's not going to be there in the next life. So in other words, traditional doesn't have much practicality in terms of like, how do I put this to use? So now, let's look at Vedantic point of view of reincarnation, and we'll see how, by understanding this view, we can actually use it for our advantage to grow in this life. So, Vedanta first addresses the word you. Like, what is the word you referring to? Is it referring to a person, or is it referring to something other than a person? Well, you obviously refers to Brahman, awareness. Now, is awareness ever incarnate? Incarnate comes from the word, it's a Latin word, like flesh. That's why we have carnivore. So incarnate, that is awareness ever a piece of meat? No. Awareness is free from the meat. Awareness is free from the person. So that means you are never actually incarnated. Now, however, because a jiva associates a thought with the you, with Brahman, with the I, then what happens is we have a mixture of a thought and awareness. So in other words, what happens is the you consciousness gets born into a thought. You understand? In other words, if a person dies with a thought, quote, I am the body, mind, intellect, then what's going to happen naturally based on that logic? Ishvara is obligated to supply a body consistent with that view or that opinion or that understanding about reality, therefore providing another human birth until one understands that the I is what? No, not the intellect, not the mind, not the body. You understand? So here we have a little cycle. So due to ignorance, the Jiva thinks or confuses the BMI, in other words, the body, mind, intellect. That's the Jiva, the body, mind, intellect. It confuses the body, mind, intellect, and it thinks it's real. And so what happens, it joins, so in other words, the awareness joins with the thought, which is actually unreal, but because I think it's real, I join with the thought. But I'm not the thought. But because I believe I am the thought, and I think it's real, I join with the thought. But I'm not the thought. And so the reincarnation process continues. Why? Because the I is associated with the BMI, with the body, mind, intellect. So now, how does this? What do we do with this information in terms of a pragmatic approach? It means that the purpose of Vedanta is to dissociate the I from the BMI. All right. Okay, so now we're going to move on. We're now clear about the traditional view of reincarnation and the Vedantic view of reincarnation. Okay. Is there any questions or doubts or opinions from the session so far or from last week? Last week we spoke about desire, how desire and why desire happens, and how desire tricks a jiva into chasing worldly objects, thinking that the joy is in the object, and by the obtaining of that object, I would then fill the empty void which I feel is present in the moment. But that's what, due to ignorance, that I am not already whole and complete. So if I understand that I am already whole and complete and nothing can be added onto me, then what sense does it make to go to the world and chase or grab something or latch onto something or hold onto something out of what? The fear that out of its loss, I will lose something that doesn't actually belong to me, but due to my ignorance, I take it to be my own, and I end up depending on the object out of a false identification with myself being the body, mind, and intellect. Okay, so we talked about this last week. Now, we're going to move on. The benefit of being in a class is whenever there's a doubt, just put your hand up and we'll address it right in a moment.
I say about the karmas, just like in the traditional view, the karmas being exhausted. So they're like a learning experience. So you said the person enters the next life in circumstances where an impatient person needs to learn patience. It's not until they learn from that experience that it changes or it becomes exhausted.
It becomes exhausted, yeah. Because vasana is just simply they entangle the jiva into impatience, into certain attributes of the world, which isn't causing the jiva to what? Just to create a sense of peace, because it causes ripples in the mind. The mind is like a tranquil lake, and every vasana is like throwing a pebble in the lake, and it produces ripples. And those ripples are extremely aggravating. They're extremely unsettling for the jiva. So the jiva gets entangled by observing the ripples. And knowledge cannot take place on a rippling water because the water is too unstable. You see? So that means the water, the mind has to be absolutely still and clear. And that's why we're going to, as we get into Karma Yoga, it's all about what? Creating a lifestyle which causes an extremely calm, tranquil mind. And you will see if you hang around any sage, any wise person, they're extremely calm. Their mind is just sharp because there's no ripples in the water. Yeah. So you can see 99% of this work actually is about stilling the mind. It's not about the self, because see, nobody here needs me to say you exist. Like do I need to tell you that you exist? Why? Because it's self-evident. It's so evident that there's nothing I can say to add on to what you already know. So that means existence, what we're seeking, we already are. You just said, I exist. That's it. That's all there is to this teaching. But we cannot accept that. That's not good enough. That's why we have 16 more chapters in the Gita. All right. Finally, from the standpoint of so now this is Krishna talking to Arjuna. Finally, from the standpoint of your duty, you should be grateful for the great opportunity this war or this life situation presents. There is nothing more auspicious for a warrior than an unsolicited righteous war. If you live, you will enjoy all the pleasures of the earth, and death is an open gate to heaven. Okay, so here, Krishna is just, as I said last week, Krishna is just giving some ego reasons for Arjuna to pursue the war, because Arjuna is being a little sissy, and he sat down in the chariot or put down his bow and arrow, and he's refusing to do what his dharma is required for him to move on. So Krishna is doing his best to give him some reasons, and one of the reasons is an open gate to heaven. But that's not going to work on Arjuna, as we'll see. If you refuse to fight, in other words, to perform your worldly duty, that is, raise kids, be a good girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, colleague, whatever it is, you will only suffer. Okay. So that's where we stopped last week. Now, the people will speak of your infamy forever, and your peers, the great warriors on both sides, will speak of your cowardice, and dishonor you at every opportunity. What could be more painful? For an upright person, dishonor is worse than death. Therefore, see no difference between pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat, and prepare for battle. You will incur no sin. Now, isn't that interesting? Arjuna is supposed to now go and annihilate the entire army, and Krishna, the whole, is saying, you will incur no sin by doing so. So that's sort of a contradiction. Wouldn't that mean that I'm killing and I'm going to incur? No. Arjuna's duty is to perform, to lead the army and go to the other side and to restore Dharma in the field. Because Duryodhana, as we said, has been cheating and lying and destroying Dharma of the entire society. And if Arjuna, which is you, doesn't step up, then who is going to step up? You see? And therefore, if I don't step up, then I will suffer. Because by stepping up, that's the only way I can move on. Move on means what? Move on to a fully developed human being, a spiritual human being. Okay, clear? Now, there is no difference between pleasure and pain, or see no difference between pleasure and pain, gain and loss, victory and defeat, and prepare for battle. So this is a qualification for moksha, right here. This is a summary of what the qualifications are. See no difference between pleasure and pain. But what do human beings do? What do we do? We're all about what? Pursuing pleasure and avoiding pain. I want, I don't want. And where is that coming from? Our vasanas. And what do we say about vasanas? They keep us busy, entangled in the world. So how am I supposed to understand myself as the whole if I'm what? If I'm seeing certain things as pleasant and certain things as unpleasant. What's the logic of that? Gain and loss. Well, there's a typical one. I'm all about what? Today we're all about competition, right? Competition is about winning and at the expense of somebody else. And since what? I am the whole, there is no loss without me losing simultaneously, if you think about it. Because if I am the whole and I cause someone else to lose out because I think I won, I haven't. I've actually lost simultaneously. This is called zero-sum game. For every apparent win, there is an unseen, adrishtapalam, unseen result, which is a loss. All right. So, now let's speak of qualities of consciousness. So now this is a new topic. What is consciousness? Okay, so knowledge yoga is the primary spiritual practice. This is actually just summarizing chapter 2, verses 11 to 38. The essential nature of the individual is limitless consciousness. Now, what is limitless consciousness? What does it mean when we say limitless? What is limitless and what is consciousness? What are the attributes of limitless consciousness? Number one, consciousness is not a part, product, or property of the body. Okay, so this means that consciousness is not bound to the body. It doesn't belong to any particular part of the body. There's no body part that owns consciousness. So this actually opposes science, if you think about it, because science says what? First matter and then consciousness. That's what science says. First matter came and then out of matter came consciousness. But why does science say that? Because remember what we said the two means of knowledge are? Perception and inference. And perception and inference cannot detect consciousness. Because consciousness is the substratum upon which the entire creation is resting on. And it's the most subtlest of the subtlest. So no instrument in the universe, in creation, can know consciousness. Because everything is consciousness. How are you going to know something if you already are what you are seeking? That's why science has a problem trying to... we've been in this battle forever. I mean, it's a constant back and forth. But now it's actually good news that science... Dayananda from Rishikesh, he had many scientists coming up to him because scientists are now starting to take interest in Vedanta, knowing that they're pulling all their hair out because they cannot go farther than the smallest, like the Higgs God particle. You know, they go to subatomic and then go quartz and then go to boson and then Higgs God particle. And no matter how small scientists go, there's even something smaller, and they can never get to the smallest. In other words, all science can do is what? Dig into Maya, dig into Mithya. Is that clear? Okay, so that's why we need the Upanishads, because without the Upanishads, we're unable to understand who we are by the help of science, because science doesn't have the proper means of knowledge. Okay, number 2. Consciousness is an independent factor that makes the body sentient, just as electricity powers a fan. So it's an independent factor that makes the body sentient, just as electricity powers a fan. All right. Let's do a little experiment. Imagine every body here is a certain appliance. So this will be a fan, and then over there we have a heater, and then over here we have a projector, and then over there we have a camera, and over here we have a blender, and then over here we have a light bulb, and then over there we have a drill. Okay, so everyone is a certain appliance, electrical appliance. Now, let's do a little experiment. How much sense does it make to compare myself being an electrical appliance, doing a certain function, a good function, versus you also being a different appliance, performing a certain function? That means if I am a drill, electric drill, that means I will perform my function when I perform my function. If you're a heater, that means you will perform your function when you perform your function. So, that means what? Everyone is needed. Ishvara has brought you here. Why? Because you have an obligation to the society. You're like an appliance. You're like a blender. We don't need a blender all the time, but when you need a blender, a heater is useless. A light bulb is useless. I need a blender. But when I don't need a blender, should the blender then go and feel like it's unloved? Because nobody wants it. You see? So in other words, there is always a purpose for you when there is a purpose for you. When there is not, don't feel unloved. The world doesn't hate you. It just means that you're not needed at that time. Now, what powers every single appliance? Electricity. So that means as long as my eye is on the function, I'm going to have self-esteem issues. Because a fan, everyone needs a fan in summer. But nobody needs a heater in summer. So what? I'm now looking at the function and I think, oh, I'm so useless. But if I understand that electricity is no different in the fan or the heater than in me, then what? Self-esteem issues become impossible. Because what? I understand myself as that which pervades just like electricity, every single appliance. So therefore, keep your eye on what? This self, which everyone is, consciousness, and all your self-esteem issues, all your confidence issues go out the window. Okay. Now, another question comes up. Why do we, jivas, confuse consciousness with our bodies? Why do we have such a strong association with our thoughts? We think it's my thought. See, here's a little experiment. Your body doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to Ishvara, to God. You didn't create your body. You didn't create your mind, your thoughts, your ideas, how you're going to think, how you're going to look. You didn't compose your facial structure. You didn't compose according to what criteria you're going to think. You didn't do any of that. You just what? You just offered this body, this mind, this intellect, and then we claim it mine. I am creative. I am smart. No, you're not. It's got nothing to do with you. You're giving a certain predisposition according to the needs of the total. So Ishvara is using you. To what? To fulfill a duty in the society. So what is then Karma Yoga? Karma Yoga is about exercising yourself, being an appliance, and being the best appliance that you can be. Okay. So, now the problem is the appliance think it's an appliance. But it what? Misses out the fact that it's actually the only reason an appliance is because of the electricity. Without the electricity, it doesn't matter how advanced the appliance is, how beautiful, how intelligent the appliance is. Without electricity, that appliance is as good as totally, utterly useless. So what does a worldly person then put their attention on? They put their attention on their body, their mind, and their intellect, and others bodies, minds, and intellects. So no wonder we have self-esteem issues and all these opinions and different views and perspectives, because we're just talking about what? The form, but never about that which pervades every form, and only because of which all forms can function, which is what? Electricity, which you are not separate from. So, the question was, why do we confuse our body, our minds, and intellects with consciousness? It says because consciousness pervades everything. That means consciousness is so entangled in the body, in the mind, in the thoughts. There is no place where consciousness is not, where God is not. And because consciousness is here and over there and everywhere, what do I then say? I am this form which consciousness pervades. I am this body. I am Andre. I am this personality. Why do I say that? Because consciousness pervades everything. There is no difference between the jumper and the wool and the wool and the jumper. You cannot separate the wool from the jumper, can you? And you cannot separate the jumper from the wool, can you? So therefore, the wool and the body are like what? Consciousness and the body is like the wool and the jumper. And that's why we have such a hard time knowing who we are. Because why? We focus on the form. We focus on the jumper. And we totally miss out of what is the jumper of. Because of what does the jumper exist? Because of existence, which is consciousness. So what are we talking about here? Shifting your attention from the form to that which pervades the form. Form, consciousness. Appliance, electricity. Okay. And this is a little note here, is that if you look at all body worship kind of practices, now we're not putting down any, it's just for the sake of teaching. If you look at, for example, glorifying the body and, just beautifying the body, big muscles, men do it too, so do women, all of these things. Why do we do this? And it's all what? Out of the simple, as we explained, the ignorance that I'm actually the appliance. So I end up what? Trying to improve the appliance. I end up trying to add more functionality to the appliance. But how long is the appliance? Which washing machine lasts for over 50 years? Which blender or which light bulb lasts for more than 5 years? They all go out of service. So then what's the point of trying to put all of our attention, all of our worship on that which is inevitably going to degrade by the virtue that nothing in mithya lasts? So the lesson is change the focus from that which pervades to from the appliance to that which pervades every appliance, the entire world. Okay. Now there's a little note here, and it says you don't need the body to be. Because if you think about it, your body is actually, the science here will say, every 7 years your body is completely transformed. It gets new cells. It's no longer the body that it once was. So if however many years you are now, 7 years ago, that body is might as well is just completely different. It's a black person or a totally different person. But what's the fact? You're still here. You're still present. So what? Your body is completely different, and you still what? You still know who you are. You still what? You know about your body 7 years ago. You know about your body 30 years ago. You know about your body 1 year ago. And what has happened throughout the entire course of time? The body has lost millions and millions of cells, and so has the mind, and so have the thoughts, so have the opinions and views and labels, and everything has changed. And yet, you're still here completely present. So what does that mean? Consciousness doesn't depend on your body, nor your mind, nor your thoughts. Your thoughts, your body, your mind depends on consciousness. That's the only way you're able to say, I was so-and-so 30 years ago. I was so-and-so. I was ignorant a year ago, but now I'm not. So what does that mean? The I, consciousness, is completely unaffected by the ignorance or the knowledge. That's how that's how you're able to say, I was ignorant, but now I know. So what is ignorance or knowledge? What does lack of moksha or moksha, what does that have anything to do with consciousness? That's what we mean. You're totally free from the world. That's why you know about the world. That's why you know about the changes. Because no change actually, contaminates you, consciousness. The one because of which every change is known for what it is. Okay. Now, point 3. Consciousness is not limited by the boundaries of the body. It is all-pervading like space. Okay. So, it is all-pervading like space. So what does this mean? If you look at this room, space is everywhere. Where is space not? Can you find one place where space is not now? No. And what happens? Okay, here's a question. Does space, I'm talking about the element, space, because it's the closest element we have to compare something that is mithya to something that is indescribable, the self-awareness. Because why? Space is like everywhere. There's no place where space is not. So it's what? It's all pervasive. Just like the self, it's all pervasive. So now, when your body appears, when your body sits in the chair, does that displace space? Does space go, I need to kind of give this body some room so the body can be where it is? Is space moved by your body when it sits down in the chair? Science will even tell you you're 99% space. If you look at your cell, it's just totally transparent. There's just nothing there. So that means what? No matter what appears in space, space is never touched. No matter what appears in consciousness, you are never touched. That's why you're able to consistently report every single experience that has happened to you. Because you were not ever affected by any experience. If you were, then how could you tell one moment from the next? If you would be locked into that moment. If I was, let's say consciousness gets contaminated by joy. Could you ever again, knowing now that consciousness is what contaminated by joy, could you ever again experience frustration or anger? No. Because now consciousness is what? Contaminated by joy. So you can only experience joy. But that's not your experience, is it? You can experience joy one moment and anger the next. You've seen those YouTube pranks where the girlfriend, boyfriend, they prank each other and they say some bad news and then they get so pissed off and then before they explode, they go, oh, it was just a prank. And they go from and then they change their face, yeah? So that means what? Only reason why we're able to report all of these experiences these changes is why? Because you are never touched by your experience. That's the message. So it's not limited by the boundaries of the body. It is all pervasive like space. So, and there's another point here. Does space move? Does space move? How can what is all pervasive, how can that, why would you need to move something if it's already everywhere? So what does that mean? You never moved a day of your life. You never moved. Maya tricked you. When you walk, when your body gets up, you think you're moving. When we say, I am going to the shopping mall, how is that possible when consciousness is all pervasive? Consciousness is already in the shopping mall. It's already shopping. So then how can I say I am going to the shopping mall? What does that mean? That means I am confusing the I with what? The body. You see how Maya plays the game? So that means what? From now on, you can say my body is going to the shopping mall, but I, consciousness, am aware of the body going to the shopping mall. But I never move. We did an experiment on Sunday. I did it with you, Shinyi, isn't it? Where I provided an example. When you're in a car, okay? Now you're driving. Now, let's say we see a tree in the distance. What happens to that tree? It gets closer and closer to us, doesn't it? So we think what? That tree is coming closer to us. So that's not the case. That's a trick of Maya. You never move. So all that happens is, if you were to imagine, frame by frame, just like a movie, what? The tree is now in one frame this big, and then in the next frame it's this big, and then next frame it's this big, and then it's this big, and now it's this big. But who's the witness? From which standpoint is the witness? From you. You are the witness. So you, the witness, has what? Witnessed picture by picture in the particular form of a tree going bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that gives us an illusion that we are moving. That's how Maya plays a trick on you. I'll give you another example. Have you ever been in a train? Okay? And the train has stopped next to another train. Huh? And the other train begins to go, and you think, oh God, I'm going, we're going, huh? You're not going. You never moved. Maya created a situation and it caused it to what? Trick, and we what? Think I am then moving. You never moved a day of your life. You watched your body apparently moving, but it never moved. Why? Because everything is static. Everything is what? Here, now. There is no time and space, meaning what? There is nothing but images changing from one to the next, to the next, to the next. From where? From here and now. So that means right now the image is this room. An hour from now, the image from the standpoint of the witness is going to be what? Darkness and cars and lights and train. But the I has never moved. The I was completely still, ever present, ever here, now, sarvagatam, nityam, all pervasive, timeless, witnessing the ever changes of the pictures generated by the great Lord called Ishvara, God, Maya, the great trickster. So this is how we think that we are moving or we're doing something. Okay. Now, point 4. It does not die. When the body dies, that's good news. You don't die when the body dies. The body died. In fact, you die every day. Huh? When you go to sleep. One moment you're alive, next, dead. It's just like that. Huh? It's no big deal. But you haven't gone out of existence. Just your body has gone out of existence. Just like your thought. Where is your body when you're not thinking about your body? Where are your parents when you're not thinking about your parents? It only appears when what? A thought appears in consciousness. That's what experience means. Consciousness plus a thought equals your experience. This is also a thought. This whole room is a thought generated by Maya. And consciousness, because of consciousness, you are able to witness this, this appearance. So consciousness and thought are always together. That's what experience means. Consciousness plus a thought. So I'll give you a little example. Imagine in your mind right now, remember the color of your room, the wall of your room. Okay, now just imagine the room is now pink. Okay, so just imagine, still imagining the color of your room is pink. Okay, stop. Now, did you have that experience? Yeah? Did you imagine that? Okay, so that confirms to us that consciousness was there, awareness was there. Was the room pink? So that confirms the thought was there. And so what? You had consciousness plus experience plus a thought equals the experience of imagining a pink room. That's how experience works. Everything is a thought. Maya is just a thought appearing in me, consciousness, in you. Okay. So consciousness does not die when the body dies. It is eternal, satyam. It stands alone. It exists completely independent of objects. So here's a question. Who knew about that room when you imagined that room, pink room? Who knew about that room? Did that room know about you, or did you know about that room? Because we said, imagine a pink room. Who knew about that experience? Did that experience, did that thought know about you, or you knew about that thought? Did you look at that thought, or it was looking at you looking at the thought? You know the answer to this. You, consciousness, are what? Completely independent of objects. What does this mean? Do you cease to exist? Did you cease to exist when your thought equals object, when you stop thinking about the thought of your room? Did you cease to exist? No. So that means what? No matter what object, what thought, what experience shows up, that experience is dependent on you. That's how you're able to report and say, I had an experience. But when that experience is over, do you cease to exist? No. You're completely alert, aware, present, witnessing what? Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. A thought gets created, it gets sustained, Vishnu, and it gets destroyed, Shiva. Another thought comes, it sustains and it's destroyed. Another experience comes, it sustains and it's destroyed. So I am what? The ever-present, still witnessed consciousness, observing the ever-present or ever-moving or ever-changing thoughts coming and going constantly, and it never touches what? The witness, the observer. Okay, so I'm going to just put a little bit of a stepping up a notch of what consciousness actually means. This is a teaching from Panchadasi, chapter 5 by Swami Vidyaranya, which we'll get to in part 2. When I say consciousness or witness, what I specifically mean is non-experiencing, non-interfering, non-participating witness. In other words, it's the witness which doesn't interfere with the thought. It's the witness that doesn't participate with the thought. And it's the witness which doesn't actually get contaminated by the thought. So let's just take these two principles, non-interfering and non-participating. If consciousness was participating, then could the thought be known for what it is? If it was what? Tampered with? No way. That means what? The witness has to be non-interfering in order to know what the thought actually is. The witness has to what? Not participate so that the thought can be known exactly for what it is. Non-interfering, non-participating witness consciousness. That's when we say Aham Brahmasmi, Brahman. It doesn't interfere and it doesn't participate with the thoughts. It simply stands back apart from the thought, even though the thought is also it. Okay? So this is going to come a little bit later when we're going to bring these two dualities together and remove this separation between Satya and Mithya. And it's actually not hard because all you have to just think about is an example of the jumper and the wool. There is different forms appearing as different jumpers, different beanies, different carpets made out of wool, different blankets made out of wool, different jivas made out of wool. And yet what? They're all of the one essential nature. Wool. Okay. So, any questions so far?
Sometimes when you ask a question about you, I'm a bit confused about the capital Y you, as in rather lowercase you. I mean, because my identification is with the body and mind. Okay. I can't pretend to identify at every moment with the whole, but the distinction between the sort of you and the you is there some kind of language difference that we can use for that?
Okay, I'll say when I say you, I'll say that I'm referring to consciousness, but also when I say you see, it's not going to be very practical if we just say you, Jiva, you consciousness. So knowledge itself, through the course of this class, is going to clarify what does it mean when we say you. The irony is there's actually only you. There's nobody else here. And everyone else is just an expression, a different form, a parent form of you. One example is we take is, just imagine the ocean. Okay? Now the ocean has millions and millions of different waves. Now, from the standpoint of the wave, there's what? There's other waves. There's duality. Right? But from the standpoint of what? Okay, before we go there, are we all clear? From the standpoint that I am the wave, if I identify myself with the wave, what am I going to do automatically? I'm going to then see myself as the wave, and I'm going to see other waves. Oh, do we agree so far? Now, what is the ocean? What is that a metaphor for? Ishwaratu, God, Lord, from which everything comes from. The intelligence, the great power and the great intelligence from which everything emanates from. So that means if I identify myself with the wave, am I going to acknowledge the ocean? No, because I've identified with the wave. For me, all there is the wave. That's the word you. So the small you, as you say, means what? I am the wave. And there's all these other waves. And we're all separate. I am bigger, that one's smaller. I am smaller, I want to be like that big wave. Huh? So that's the danger of what? That's duality. That's called suffering, samsara. Now, knowing that both the wave and the ocean, what is both the wave Jiva and the ocean off?
Water.
H2O. So that means wherever there is a wave, that's exactly where H2O is. Wherever there is an ocean, that's exactly where there is H2O. In fact, there is nothing but H2O. So from that point of view, is there really such thing as a wave? No, there's only water. Because wherever there is a wave, that's exactly where there's H2O. There is only H2O everywhere. There's nothing but H2O appearing as, through the help of Maya, a different, apparently different wave, but it doesn't matter because that wave is also what? H2O. You understand? So that means what? The Jiva person, 3 bodies, means gross body, subtle body, and causal body. That defines the Jiva person, the small u. And Ishvara 2 are what? That means the wave and the ocean are what? The same substance, because of which they can both what? Exist. Without H2O, there is no ocean. Without H2O, there is no what? Wave. And yet at the same time, they're not separate. You see? Just like a wool and a jumper, they're never separate. So what does this mean? Let's make a very important distinction. Is the water, is the wave H2O? Good. Is the ocean H2O? Very good. Is the H2O the ocean? You're good. You shook your head. You said no. That's very good. Is H2O the wave? No. Why? Okay, let's just take one wave in the ocean, just one wave. Let's ignore all these other billions of waves. If the H2O was the wave, that would imply what? The H2O cannot be another wave. It cannot be the entire ocean. Why? That means H2O is always free of the form which it takes on through the help of Maya. That's what we said. What do we say? Consciousness is independent of what? Of the world. The ocean, the wave, depends on the H2O, but the H2O doesn't depend on the ocean or the wave, because wherever there is the wave and the ocean, that's exactly where there is H2O. And there is nothing but H2O, appearing as what? Apparent waves, but there is no waves, are there? Because there's only H2O. You see how Maya fools us? So that means what? In terms of taking this into a practical approach. One who doesn't know who I am, their nature, is what? Identified with the wave. One who knows still remains the wave. It doesn't matter, enlightened or not. Knows that even though there are what? Seemingly millions and billions of forms, waves, it is all what? It's all me. Now, do you understand what the word me means? Me means what? H2O, because I cannot say there is only consciousness. That's another duality. It's a direct what? Ownership, because I already am that. I'm already H2O. So now the word me starts to make sense. And this is also a confusion in the Dvaita world. You'll just a little catch up. You'll know, like Prabhupada, Bhagavad Gita as it is, also happens in the Christian world, where when they read the scriptures, they will see words like when Jesus says, his name is Yeshua ben Yosef, but we call him Jesus. He says, I am the light, I am the wave. I am the light, I am the I am the light, I am the way. So what people think, the readers think out of their ignorance, I is referring to Jesus. Jesus is not referring to Jesus. Jesus is referring to what? H2O, which everything is off. Same with Krishna. This is where the as it is, Prabhupada, is a huge Krishna consciousness. We sing Krishna consciousness, we're up in the air. We have a huge group in Byron. You guys know that I just moved from Byron. We had groups constantly just chanting Hare Krishna. And so now why is this? It's simply because when they read the Gita and Krishna says me, capital M-E, they think it's talking about some different loka. It's the same thing with Christianity. We think God is somewhere else. God is is in some different dimension. So then we do karma kanda. That's the first portion of Vedas. That is the rituals. We'll get into this. The ritual portion is just same with the mandates in the Christianity. We follow the 10 Commandments, so we just follow the way. And then when we follow the way, according to our good deeds, one day when we die, we're going to get to what? Sport with Krishna. Sport with the Lord. And their argument, you know what their argument is? They said, why would I want to be Krishna if I can taste Krishna? Why would I want to be the whole? That's what Krishna means. Krishna means everything, the whole. If I can when I can experience, I can enjoy Krishna. You see the mistake of subject-object, superimposition from the ignorance of the self onto the Lord. So they objectify the Lord as an object, and so I am going to enjoy the object. You see how the superimposition out of ignorance gets projected onto the Lord, onto God? Yeah. So that means that we don't have anything against them. In fact, duality, this is an important statement, duality does not contradict non-duality. Do you know why? Why does non-duality doesn't contradict? Why does Dvaita not contradict Advaita? Okay, simple example. If I see the jumper, can I say that I don't see the wool? Or I can if I don't acknowledge the wool. So that means what? Dvaita is what? Form. And what is form? It's difference. All forms are difference. But out of what are all those forms of? H2O. So what? Advaita doesn't contradict Dvaita, because Maya creates appearance. So we agree with the dualists. We say, yeah, absolutely, there's difference. But because why? We know of what? Ishvara 1. We know that what? H2O pervades every single form. Just like electricity pervades every single appliance. So what? Dvaita focuses on the appliance, so of course it's going to be different. Of course there is another big mega appliance out there which I want to merge with, But if I understand that there is only H2O, tell me, what is there to merge with if everything is H2O? It doesn't make sense. All right. Now, this is a huge one. So we're still on the topic of consciousness. It is not a doer or an enjoyer. If it doesn't do karma, it cannot enjoy the results of action. It does not change. Nirvikara. Nir means not, and vikara means modification. So not modified. That's what self is. Nirvikara. Now, so consciousness is not a doer or an enjoyer. So what does this mean? That means the one who enjoys or does is not consciousness. That's Ishvara. Ishvara 2. And Jiva. That's a Jiva in the field of Ishvara 2. and by the faculty of the mind, intellect, and the ego, there's an enjoyment. But who is what? What pervades those faculties? What pervades the faculties where enjoyment is experienced? Where enjoyment is experienced, by the way, is what? The mind, intellect, and the ego. That's where all experience happens, in your mind and your intellect. It doesn't happen in the physical body. And if you say it does, it's only why? Because it's pervaded by the subtle body. You want me to prove it? Very easy. What happens if I take a knife and do a little cut? Not too gory, just a little cut, and it hurts. It hurts, yes? You can confirm that. Okay? Now, why does it hurt? Because it's pervaded by the subtle body. Now, what happens when you cut your fingernails or your hair? Does it hurt? Why? There's no subtle body there. There is nothing to feel it. It's as good as a stone. It's completely inert. So that means what? Subtle body, when pervaded, when subtle body pervades the gross body takes on apparent sentiency. That means the only reason why your subtle body can feel, can hear, is because why? Because it's pervaded by the subtle body. You take the subtle body, feeling becomes impossible. You understand that? So subtle body, summary, subtle body pervades the gross body. That's why we have what? Pleasure or pain, and we think, oh, my stomach hurts, my body, I've got a headache. Where is that experience felt? In the mind and your intellect. The physical body is just what? It's a representation of the pain. But who is there to feel that pain? The subtle body. Now, what pervades the subtle body? Consciousness. So therefore, subtle body is as good as useless without consciousness. You can have Einstein lying right now in a coma. Very smart, very, a decent person. But unless that person is conscious, that body is as good as useless. It's dead. So that means what? All the intellects there, all the faculties are working, but because one's in a coma, or there's no consciousness there, it's what? There's nothing to pervade that, and therefore there is nothing to add sentiency to the body. So that means what? The Jiva claims, I am conscious. Why? Why does a person claim, I am conscious, I am aware? Because that awareness is being borrowed from the original awareness. In other words, the wave is borrowing its sentiency from the H2O and then claiming, see, I'm here, I'm alive, I am different from everyone else, I am consciousness. No. It's borrowing its sense of aliveness, of what? Awareness from where? From H2O. Without H2O, that wave could not even know that it's a wave. Understand? Okay, so it is not a doer or enjoyer. Now, who is a doer or an enjoyer according to this graph? Ego, ahamkar. What is the ego? Now we're on a different topic. We haven't talked about the ego very much. Now we're introducing the ego. It's going to become a big topic for karma yoga because, let's get this very clear, the purpose of karma yoga is to give the ego meaning what? Doer, enjoyer. So the one that does, that's the ego. The one that enjoys, that's the ego. Giving the doer, enjoyer actions which, when performed, purify the mind, paving way for self-knowledge, therefore understanding Sarvam Brahmaha, I am the whole. You see the logic here? The entire Gita is only two yogas, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. We also have Bhakti Yoga, that's love. We're going to do that at the end. How does love actually fit into this entire picture? So that means Karma Yoga's purpose is to what? Remove the pebbles from the still lake so that I can have a tranquil mind and so that I can properly plant the seeds of self-knowledge and give them what? A proper life to fructify into a full, mature understanding, full, solid, established, firm self-knowledge, and I can claim, or not claim, but just understand directly. It's called Anubha. Never mind. It's called direct experience of what? The self as the self. You understand what that means? It means directly knowing the self as the self, not something as if it's apart from me, like an intellectual thought, but what? That is only me here. So we're not talking intellectual thoughts here. We're not talking about an idea. There is only one here. We're talking about a direct understanding that there is only me here. Sarvam Brahmaha. There is only H2O here. So that's the purpose of Karma Yoga. Okay. If it doesn't do karma, we're going to finish soon. If it doesn't do karma, it cannot enjoy the results of action. So here what it's saying is it doesn't enjoy either. It's the awareness of the enjoyer, but it's not the enjoyer. It's the awareness of the doer, but it's not the doer. Okay? All right, let's close, and next week we will reiterate these points for a reminder and then continue the rest of this discussion and begin Karma Yoga about 1 or 2 sessions from this week.
Nainam chindanti shastrani Nainam dahati pavakaha Na chainam kledayantyapaha Na shoshayati marutaha Acchedyoyamadahyyoyam Akledyo shoshya evacha Nityas sarvagatasthānuh Achaloyam sanatanaha
Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha Sarve santu niramaya Sarve bhadrani pashyantu Ma kaschid dukkhabhag bhavet Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Andre, the document you're using for the text, is that from a book or is that a James thing, isn't it?
This one?
No, the one that you're working from tonight.
That one is from 4,000 page Bhagavad Gita course from Swami Dayananda. It's 9 volumes. And it's a summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita, basically. It's purely an instruction form of a moksha shastra, but it's also, a moksha shastra is something that is meant to remove ignorance, and dharma shastra, which is how to live in accordance with the principles as to create harmony in life. Mm-hmm. So the answer to that is it's from Swami Dayananda, and it's using certain quotes and certain excerpts and certain verses which are specifically selected to go through the Gita in the shortest amount of time possible while still maintaining the essence of the Gita without losing the essential teachings of it. So because, see, we're doing this every week, the usual way to study Gita is every day for about 1 or 2 years. we just go through the whole Gita in detail. So it creates a little bit of a different learning situation. So for that reason, we have 40 pages extracted out of 4,000 in order to bring it into a very pragmatic, succinct, and precise approach without losing the essence of the teaching.
Is it? I've actually got that document that I think it's a PDF, it's just a really big one.
Yeah.
But it seems like different typefaces. Is that have you modified that? Have you extracted it from that and edited it?
Yeah, this is actually from James Schwartz.
Oh, okay.
He took it from Swami Dayananda, and all of these commentaries are mine to add extra clarity. But it all preserves the original essence. None of it sort of deviates. Yeah. Okay. So this is Swami Dayananda, and he is my teacher's Nima. I'm with Nima, and she was with Swami Dayananda for 3 years residential course. That's basically every day in class for 3 years.
And she still teaches that, does she?
She teaches certain Upanishads. She taught me Chandogya Upanishad, and I'm going to do Chandogya Upanishad with you guys also, between Udalaka and Shweta-ketu, chapter 6, and it's an extremely accurate teaching to resolve the contradiction between Satya and Mithya, to understand oneself as the whole. Yeah, I'll do that with you guys soon enough as we start, just to kind of establish a little bit more terminology and common ground with the Gita. Yeah. Yeah, there's other texts like Viveka Chudamani, and it's written by Shankara, and it's the crest jewel of discrimination, and it's a very advanced text. And I'm thinking of perhaps going through that text after we finish the Bhagavad Gita, because its structure is extremely helpful it's very precise to bring one from the understanding oneself as the Jiva, and it goes through 101, 107 verses to cause one to arrive to Sarvam Brahmaha. Yeah. So they're all different vehicles, but they all take us to the same H2O, electricity. Yeah. So you see, when you hear it from a different angle, it helps.